Now, the top of the hour on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn presents the Green News Report.
Humanity has not made sufficient progress on the existential risks that endanger us all.
The doomsday clock ticks closer to midnight. Yet another court blocks Trump administration's cancellation of offshore wind projects. Plus,
fully electric car sales in December overtook petrol for the first time in the European Union.
Europe accelerates its shift to electric vehicles.
Nice. All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
We can't even get through a snowstorm without being reminded of how badly this is going.
You need to just still be careful because ice can still be out there.
Just don't mention the storm might be the result of El Nino, or it might get dragged out of the car in front of the kids.
This is your Green News Report.
Too soon? All right, fair enough.
Okay, Desi Doyen, we start with something light. Humanity may be coming to an end.
Yes, humanity is closer than it's ever been to destruction. According to the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists this week, the group moved up its metaphorical doomsday clock to 85 seconds to midnight, 4 seconds closer than last year, citing human-caused climate change as a major factor. Here's Alexandra Bell, president of the Bulletin.
The doomsday clock is a tool for communicating how close we are to destroying the world with technologies of our own making. The risks we face from nuclear weapons, climate change, and disruptive technologies are all growing. Every second counts, and we are running out of time.
The statement highlighted accelerating droughts, heat waves, and floods linked to man-made global warming, as well as the failure of nations to move faster to address it. And they singled out President Donald Trump and his efforts to boost fossil fuel production and hinder renewable energy.
He stopped listening after you said they singled out Donald Trump.
True. The announcement also noted that, quote, hard-won global understandings are collapsing, undermining the international cooperation needed to reduce existential risks. Relatedly, on the same day as that announcement, the United States officially exited the landmark Paris Climate Agreement for the second time under Donald Trump. The U.S. is the only nation to leave the accord. Experts say the U.S. withdrawal will slow but not halt the global energy transition, and it is likely to complicate international climate cooperation. They warn the Trump administration is undermining America's long-term economic competitiveness by curtailing its booming clean tech industries.
He certainly is.
Meanwhile, Australia is sweltering in a record heat wave, with temperatures pushing 122 degrees Fahrenheit in some areas. The extreme heat forced the Australian Open Tennis Championship in Melbourne to reschedule matches. Some encouraging news. In Europe, electric vehicles just outsold conventional fossil fuel cars for the first time ever.
Really?
EVs made up a quarter of all new vehicle registrations as of December 2025, according to new auto industry data.
Nice.
Sales of conventional fossil-fueled cars fell 20% year over year, while hybrid vehicles remain the top sellers in the EU car market.
Nice.
Tesla registrations were down by more than a fifth. Competitor BYD of China saw a 230% rise.
Oh, man.
The new sales milestone comes despite policymakers proposing to delay the EU's deadline to phase out conventional fossil fuel car sales by 2035. It is a remarkably fast shift when you consider that EV technology hit mass production less than a decade ago.
Also, EVs are better.
Here in the U.S., a new study provides real-world evidence that adoption of EVs immediately improves air quality. Using satellite data, researchers at the University of Southern California found that as more zero-emission vehicles hit California roads, air pollution dropped in nearby neighborhoods.
Like I said, EVs are better.
And finally, a federal judge this week allowed a nearly complete offshore wind project off the coast of Massachusetts to resume construction after it was halted by the Trump administration. The judge in the Vineyard Wind case said he was not persuaded by the government's newfound claims of national security concerns after he reviewed a new classified Defense Department report. It's the latest legal setback in the administration's efforts to halt 5 East Coast wind projects. 4 of those projects have been restarted by courts so far.
Great job, Trump. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Don't forget, you can download our reports anytime via Pandora, TuneIn, Apple, Amazon, and iHeart Podcasts. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the social medias, especially at Blue Sky at Green News Report. Stop on by bradblog.com. We are celebrating our 22nd anniversary of public-supported journalism. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Please help Progressive Voices support the Green News Report by stopping by bradblog.com/donate.
Why do they doubt the kid? I'm about to prove them all wrong again. I got a low tolerance, cause they don't even know what the problem is. It's me. You waiting on the boy to fail, then hold your breath and face your death. Cause you play a roulette with each step. I progress, no less. Go ahead and place your bets. Cause we know who we are, we know we top tier. Cause all the hate that you bring, we know it stops here. I'm taking off like a rocket here and stopping here. It's strange how they cannot see the future, but see profit here. Wait up, we gon' always win. Tell 'em I can't take no loss. My team hold no L's, no. Aiming for the top, can't make it by myself.
All right. Oh, man. Another week moving quick, real quick. Again, we're letting the Epstein stuff simmer. We're letting it simmer and sizzle. We'll get back around to it. But we got a lot of things to cover today, and we're going to take you in a lot of different directions today, and I want you to stay with me. Okay, I want you to stay with me. First, we're going to update a couple things, and we're going to bring a little bit of a context to what the president has been saying about the elections, and we're going to hear from them. And when I say them, I mean the cult and their leader. We're going to hear from all of them on this whole nationalization of the elections talk. Then I'm going to scare you again. I've been enjoying doing that lately. I scare myself, so I want you to empathize with me. I sit here and get scared. The more I learn about, the surveillance state that we live in, I want to share that with you. I want to share the fear. I want to share it. But no, these are things we got to know. So I'm going to scare you. I'm going to update you. Then I'm going to scare you. And then I'm going to piss you off. Then I'm just going to flat piss you off. That's how that's going to go. First, the updates. We talked about, delighted in, right? Enjoyed to the fullest. Ed Martin getting ostracized, right? Ed Martin getting demoted, literally kicked out of the Oval Office, sent to offices in the far reaches of Washington, way away from the president and his crew, his crew that's in favor right now. He's gone out of the weaponization working group, no longer leading that as they start to ramp up their efforts, meeting every single day. How are we going to get Jack Smith, Schiff, Letitia James, Lisa Cook, Bolton, and anybody else we got to get? We got to go get them. Because we're the weaponization working group, and we're working against weaponization as we weaponize the federal government. It's a huge joke. Ed Martin, no longer the head of it. Gone. Well, little bit of reporting has come out as to why possibly it was such a quick expulsion, right? And such a demonstrative one. Now, he hasn't been fired, because that's embarrassing to Trump. He has been flung to the outreaches of Washington, supposedly back at his job as the pardoning attorney for the U.S., but we all know that Trump pardons whoever curries favor with him. Doesn't need a pardoning attorney. He has lost his crown as the weaponization czar. He's lost it. And some details have come out on maybe why exactly. There has been a Justice Department review. See, they've been doing a little investigating. And I'm referring back to old stories we've done. I told you about the FHFA Inspector General Joe John Allen, who was squeezed out as Polt squeezed everybody out that wasn't directly in lockstep. And a stink started getting raised. People started smelling something in the air surrounding how Bill Polt had gained knowledge on James and Schiff to send referrals to the Justice Department for charges. How he had gained this information. And Joe John Allen was cut out of all of it. The Inspector General, who usually investigates any type of mortgage fraud on a large scale, especially like this, was completely stiff-armed and cut out of the entire process. Bill Polt had completely weaponized the FHFA. And the last act of as Inspector General, Joe John Allen referred his own charges to the DOJ. And it appears in secrecy, in the dead of the night, away from the prying eyes of maybe Donald himself, the DOJ, portions of it, have been reviewing materials and testimony in an investigation into Ed Martin and Bill Polt. Had they shared grand jury evidence and materials with non-authorized personnel, let's say, what it looks like is that Martin and Polt had two, we don't know who they are right now, individuals posing as DOJ investigators, claiming to people that they wished to talk to, that they were working alongside Bill Polt and Ed Martin in an investigation. Turns out they weren't federal investigators. Turns out they weren't working for the government at all. And Polt and Martin shared all sorts of grand jury materials with them so they could conduct this fraudulent, pseudo investigation of their own. One person testified to it. Christine Bish, who is a Republican in California, said that these two gentlemen had approached her with questions, and they claimed they were working with the federal government and in conjunction with Ed Martin and Bill Polt. Scotty, what's up?
Do you think that he would go down if he would have been successful?
Absolutely not. Oh, no way.
Like this whole, using fake investigators and doing things, taking pictures in front of the James house and, being the eagle. Right?
All that is very bigly and strongly.
Do you think they went out? Do you think Trump's like, we need to get rid of him? How do we get rid of him?
Yeah, we can't fire him because that's not bigly and strongly.
Right, and Blanche said, let me do something. Let me see what we got here.
Let's see what we got here. Now that's exactly.
Now, could that be a blueprint moving forward to other people within the administration that are not delivering and they have done unethical, maybe even illegal things, a way of bouncing them?
And to prove that point, Scott, is this going to be a methodology they use to distance themselves from terrible picks they can watch what happens with Kristi Noem. We're talking about hearings on March 3rd. Let's see if any investigations spurn from those oversight hearings. What if charges come out of nowhere against Bovino first? And it broadens. All right, all of a sudden, we had this internal DHS investigation or an internal DOJ investigation because we were so appalled by these killings, as appalled as you all were, that we started investigations. And lo and behold, it was all Bovino's fault. And who gave Bovino his orders and facilitated him violating constitutional rights? It was Kristi Noem. Well, of course we have to prosecute. Now we don't have to fire you. We put you in jail. Rogue, yeah. Ed Martin, Bill Polt, you guys are on a serving platter. They don't want to fire you. That's not bigly and strongly, but if details come out by Trump's investigators that you've been breaking the law and violating rights, well, we'll have no choice than to distance ourselves further from you by having you arrested. Yo, what's up?
I was also just thinking, I don't know him personally, Ed Martin.
Yeah.
But he seems like one of these people that when he gets if he got bounced, fired
he
and
might
embarrassed,
start talking.
He would just start singing, just like Bolton did, just like all these other guys. They write books and things like that.
Yep.
So by keeping him under the thumb, still working,
right,
and holding some kind of case over top of them,
right,
it's keeping them silent.
Right. A firing would definitely, it would inspire a little bit of backlash. A little bit of tit for tat, possibly, that could get really, really ugly. It's a great point, Scotty. That's a great point, yeah. And all of this got brought up, this whole investigation, it started to stink within the FHFA when emails were passed along. The wrong people read the wrong thing in the wrong email. And like Scotty said, had that not happened, it was within Fannie Mae's executive level, these emails started and this stink started rising. If that had not happened, oh no, this would never have been a problem. None of this would have been a problem. None of this would have been a problem had that not happened. Okay, we keep it Oscar Mike. We keep it moving. Let's see what happens with Ed Martin. Let's see if charges are filed. That'd be crazy. Let's see what happens. But we're going to keep it moving. Nationalizing elections. This dude, Trump, went right on Bongino's podcast. Mr. Disgraced Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino goes back to radicalized podcasting and immediately has his cult leader on. And the cult leader says things like we should nationalize in at least 15 states, take it out of the states' hands, Republicans should handle elections. Well, the fallout is beginning. And as the fallout begins on this type of unconstitutional talk, they start getting out in front of it. And they send the usual suspects out in front of cameras to defend the president's words and tell you didn't just hear what you heard. Right? That's Levitt's job. Some people are just getting right on board with the president's narrative. Okay, you know what? First, okay, so he said on Tuesday that he believed the federal government should get involved in elections that are riddled with corruption. If states can't count the votes legally and honestly, then somebody else should take over. Look at some of the places. The horrible corruption on elections, and the federal government should not allow that. The federal government should get involved. This is Trump. Okay. Yeah, let's play Bannon. This is what it looks like to Steve Bannon. You want to translate what the president's saying into Bannon speak? Listen to this wacko.
You're damn right. We're going to have ICE surround the polls come November. We're not going to sit here and allow you to steal the country again. And you can whine and cry and throw your toys out of the pram all you want, but we will never again allow an election to be stolen. You're damn right. We're going to have ICE.
Unreal. And then, of course, there's other tactics one could take if you want to back up what the president's saying, like justify why he's saying it. Intro, Mike Johnson.
Follow up on elections. The president says that he wants Republicans to nationalize elections. Do you agree with him? And do you have confidence in how elections are conducted right now, heading into the midterm?
We have thoughtful debate about our election system every election cycle and sometimes in between. We know it's in our system. The states have been in charge of administering their elections. What you're hearing from the president is his frustration about the lack of some of the blue states, frankly, of enforcing these things and making sure that they are free and fair elections. We need constant improvement on that front. I don't know what the ultimate solution is going to be. I'm not going to get ahead of the negotiations here, but I think that is something that's going to be a continuing theme here. It's something that we'll continue to push, and we hope the governors will insist upon that same thing as well. In some of the states, like in California, for example, I mean, they hold the elections open for weeks after Election Day. That's just one thing that bothers so many people. We had 3 House Republican candidates who were ahead on Election Day in the last election cycle. And every time a new tranche of ballots came in, they just magically whittled away until their leads were lost. And no series of ballots that were counted after Election Day were our candidates ahead on any of those counts. It looks on its face to be fraudulent. Can I prove that? No, because it happened so far upstream. But we need more confidence in the American people in the election system, and it's essential. And everybody, no matter what party you're in, should agree with that. The mass mailing of paper ballots or mail-in ballots and all the other irregularities that have haunted us over the last couple of cycles, we need to tighten that up. Now, the red states have done a lot of good work in that front, but it's the blue states that I'm frankly concerned about. So we'll see how the law is modified and what's changed, but I hope we can get consensus to get that done. Yeah.
All right, Mike. I'm going to go ahead and say what you already know. The reason the tallies heavily favor Democrats late is because that's when the mail-in voting and the ballot voting is tabulated, okay? And it takes a little while sometimes for the mail-in voting to get tabulated. And previously, before this regime, if you postmarked it well before the election day, they continued to tabulate it after the night of the election because you got it in. regardless of how dysfunctional Mr. Louis DeJoy's post office is, no matter how late and how dysfunctional they are, if you sent it out before Election Day, it's tabulated no matter how long it takes. They know that. And that is why it magically looks like there's fraud at the end of elections. Get out of here, Mike Johnson.
It's time for a quick break, then we break some more. You're listening to Brett Breaks Things.
I'm happy Trump chickened out. I'm happy he caved. I'm happy that it came to an end. I'm happy that the Europeans stood up against him. I'm happy that this situation did not lead to a shooting war where American troops were going to have to post up against NATO allies. If I were France, Denmark, and the other folks that have sent troops over to Greenland, I'd leave them there for the law, guys. No one in this country for even a moment should have thought, wow, the invasion of a foreign ally is a great idea. But Donald Trump did. There are a million reasons why they claim to want it: rare earths, missile defense, all that garbage. But it was really to break NATO. Now, NATO is intact. While Donald Trump is president, I don't think they ever trust us again. I don't think they ever have faith that we'll keep our word. If a NATO ally was invaded right now, I don't think U.S. would participate. I think Trump would say, nope, it's fine. I got business deals to do.
Now back to Brett Breaks Things, smashing spin, silencing the noise, and keeping it all facts. No fluff.
Referring to.
But to be clear, he does believe the state should oversee elections.
The president believes in the United States Constitution. However, he believes there has obviously been a lot of fraud and irregularities that have taken place in American elections. And again, voter ID is a highly popular and common sense policy that the president wants to pursue, and he wants to pass legislation to make that happen for all states across the country.
And just to follow up on
Okay, what she's talking about is the SAVE Act. The legislation, voter ID laws, common sense legislation that the president wants to pass. That's called the SAVE Act. That's what she's referring to there, the SAVE Act. She says the president, quote, what the president was referring to is the SAVE Act, which is huge common sense piece of legislation that Republicans have supported, that President Trump is committed to signing into law during his term. This is how you do it. This is why she's so good at her job. You have to really dig and claw and scrape for the truth if you want to get around her spin. And she's cleaning up what the president's saying in front of the nation, and at the same time pushing this SAVE Act legislation, which on its face seems in some ways common sense. It really does in some ways. And she's saying you didn't hear what you just heard. What he's referring to is the SAVE Act. That's what he's referring to. You didn't just hear him say nationalization, take over the elections. You didn't hear what you heard. I'll tell you what you heard. I'm Caroline Levitt. I'll tell you what you heard. What you heard is President referring to the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act will do this. It will do these things. It will require you to provide a birth certificate or passport in person to the registration near you. In person. That's one. It would penalize any election officials in any capacity for failing to seek such proof in person. And it would also require states to proactively remove non-citizens from their voter rolls, so they can weaponize their DOJ after the fact and go after people saying you didn't do this, you didn't eject this many, however many we found. How did we find them? Oh, well, Scott Linedecker owns the machines. And we looked at the Scott Linedecker info and we matched it up against your info. And guess what? It didn't match. It didn't match. And under the SAVE Act, we can now charge you because you didn't eject these illegal voters that Scott has identified through his Dominion voting machines. You see how this gets real dicey real quick? Now, the SAVE Act, it stalled. It stalled in the Senate. It passed the House narrowly, and it stalled in the Senate. They couldn't get the 7 Democrats they needed. They got to have 60 to do the SAVE Act. Couldn't get it. But they are trying again and trying again. In just the last couple weeks, the conservative Republicans, the big money, has been pressuring, the Senate to take it back up and get a vote on this. Somehow get these 7 Democrats in line, by hook or by crook. We got to get the SAVE Act passed. Okay? But that is what she's referring to. Now, here's the thing. This dude absolutely can't help himself. After he sent Carolyn Leavitt out in front of cameras to clean up his mess, tell you didn't hear what you heard, I'll tell you what you heard. And she cleans it up and says he's referring to the SAVE Act, although he's never mentioned it once. The president then comes out after that. Context. The president got a bunch of House and Senate Republicans together to sign legislation to get most of the government funded through September. That's right. The partial shutdown has been ended. It passed, and it's been signed. And just like I told you, it's got a two-week deadline for DHS. In 2 weeks, February 13th, they better figure out some kind of agreement on DHS funding. Now, today, Holman announced 700 federal agents will be removed from Minneapolis. So that might be a signal that, hey, Republicans, we're going to allow you to get on board with a little bit stricter and tougher, wording concerning DHS policy tied to their funding. I think we're going to allow a little bit tougher wording. We're going to hold them to a little bit higher standard and we're going to get this DHS funding passed. Don't forget, none of this will stop if they don't pass the DHS funding because of the $75 billion awarded to ICE in the One Big Beautiful Bill. They got the cash. Don't worry about them. They'll keep violating your rights even if they don't get funded through legislation. Don't worry. They'll be okay. But, okay. End of the context. We signed the legislation, partial shutdown over. Trump shows up to sign it, and a little camera opportunity, a little photo op. The backdrop is our House and Senate Republicans chosen to stand behind him while he signs this. And this is what he said at that time.
What exactly did you mean when you said that you should nationalize elections? And which 15 states are you talking about?
I want to see elections be honest. And if a state can't run an election, I think the people behind me should do something about it. Because, if you think about it, a state is an agent for the federal government in elections. I don't know why the federal government doesn't do them anyway. But when you see some of these states about how horribly they run their elections, what a disgrace it is, I think the federal government, when you see crooked elections, and we had plenty of them, and by the way, we had them last time, but go to 2020 and look at the facts that are coming out. Rigged, crooked elections. If we have areas, take a look at Detroit, take a look at Pennsylvania, take a look at Philadelphia. You go take a look at Atlanta. Look at some of the places that horrible corruption on elections. And the federal government should not allow that. The federal government should get involved. These are agents of the federal government to count the votes. If they can't count the votes legally and honestly, then somebody else should take over.
The Constitution says it should be states that administer elections, Mr. President.
Yeah, they can, you know what? They can administer the election, but they have to do it honestly.
Are you open to negotiating on warrants when it comes to ICE?
All right. Philadelphia. This guy. The Constitution. Caitlin Collins tried to speak up and say, but Mr. President, the Constitution directs that states, blah, blah, blah. And the states, they have to do it fairly, legally. Okay. Section 4 of the Constitution. Section 4. Article 1, Section 4, Clause 1. The times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. But the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations except as to the places of choosing senators. All right, so there it is. There it is. So what he's saying there, it kind of tells you that he didn't go send Carolyn Leavitt out to clean up his mess. Somebody much more intelligent than Don did. And that's what that's the bread and butter of this administration. Don goes out and says wild crap that he wants to do. Sends much more politically and, just much more savvy people out to clean up his mess and tell you didn't hear what you just heard. And then they do it anyway. or threaten to or pull up to the brink of, like Greenland, right? And then they try to do it anyway. Don tells you, they clean it up, and then they do it. Rinse and repeat. And no, Don didn't send Carolyn Levitt out. Somebody much more intelligent than Don did, and Don didn't get the memo. I didn't hear him mention the SAVE Act once in that little speech after Carolyn said he was referring to the SAVE Act. Thanks for trying, Carolyn. Thanks for trying. You did your job. You did the thing. What can you do? The cult leader he's got a huge mouth, and he is not interested in your optics. And he is not up to date on Article 1 of the Constitution, okay? And he didn't catch your little briefing there. He didn't catch it. He's not interested. He's going to go in front of Republican House and Senate Republicans. He's going to go right in front of them and say, these guys need to do something about it. The federal government, they need to do something about it. Okay. All right. Now, Carolyn Levitt didn't say what 15 states. You heard President Trump mention Philadelphia, Detroit, Atlanta. He mentioned a few places, right? But they're not talking about the 15 states they want to nationalize the elections in. Scotty.
I got my guesses.
Yeah.
All right, so I've got, obviously, California.
Yeah,
Minnesota.
California, of course.
Georgia.
Yep. New York.
Yep.
Then
Then I got Nevada, Arizona.
Yeah.
Colorado.
Yeah.
Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
Massachusetts. Pennsylvania or Philadelphia.
Right.
Michigan.
I was just about to say, you haven't said Michigan yet. Yep.
Then it gets into Wisconsin probably.
Yep.
I could see New Hampshire.
Right.
Possibly Alaska. Texas maybe, especially with the. He could go that way.
That would be dangerous.
Right.
Those don't tread on me MFers out there with their
so
guns.
that's a maybe. Utah maybe because of their mail-in ballot thing.
Right. Now thank you.
Or New Jersey maybe.
New Jersey, big mud in his eye. Mikey Sherrill, now the governor. That's huge mud in Trump's eye. I could totally see him taking that personal.
So, I think it's going to be, obviously, that's going to be your list of 15. I think I named 16 there. But
no, that tracks, man. That tracks. That totally tracks. So there it is. Look, we're hitting you with a lot of election stuff. And it's important. And we're doing it before it really ramps up because we need to see this stuff coming. And the great reporting done by the New York Times, especially Washington Journal, WAPO, it is absolutely necessary, and they're doing it at the right time, well before the pieces get in place. And we're watching it happen real time. How much of it we can stop, that remains to be seen. Why Dominion would sell to Scott Lidecker after they had just won a $1.3 billion settlement against Fox News. They won a $1.3 billion settlement against Newsmax. They had won millions from individuals who had pushed the lies about their machines. They were flush with cash. God, I need to know why Dominion sold to Scott Lidecker. I got to know. But now that they have, Scott Lidecker controls all of these voting machines in 27 states, and they're seizing ballots, and they're suing states for their voter rolls. We have to document it now. We have to document it now and hope to God there is some apparatus in place to identify it then and hold somebody accountable.
We'll be back to break it all down. You're listening to Brett Breaks Things.
This guy showed up with a gun and, they quickly got off he was brandishing it when the video there, but they're still saying, you're not allowed to do that. And they fetishize it. And I think what was galling to me is, they're willing to suddenly challenge their Second Amendment rights in this instance. But when a bunch of kids were gunned down in a fucking grade school at Sandy Hook or in Uvalde, not a word about, hey, guns might be an issue. We might want to think about that. It took a guy holding a phone trying to protect a woman who had just been pepper sprayed for them to finally go, maybe everybody shouldn't be armed. And that's the part that stunned me.
Well, and Kash Patel said that, don't bring a gun to a protest. Kash Patel offered to help Kyle Rittenhouse sue Joe Biden in the media for, character assassination when, he brought his guns across the state line. I mean, Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, there was a guy in Texas during the George Floyd protests who texted a friend saying, I'm going to go kill a protester, who posted online in a forum, I'm going to go kill a protester, and then went out and killed a protester. And Greg Abbott pardoned him. I mean, he was convicted by a jury, and Greg Abbott pardoned him. That guy brought a gun to a protest for the specific purpose of murdering someone. And Abbott, because he was a right-winger and killed turned out to be libertarian-ish protester, not a far-left protester, but Abbott pardoned him. So it's all hypocrisy all the way down.
And look, in Florida, DeSantis has been very clear. If you want to use your car as a lethal weapon on protesters, be my guest. Are we in a situation now, Joseph, where all of these tools, nobody cares what happens as long as the tools of the state are used against people that they hate? Is that the philosophy now?
Broadly speaking, it seems that. And usually the carve-out would be, don't worry, the tools are being sold to HSI. Again, the quote-unquote good guys part of ICE, that sort of thing. But when you have data from the Cato Institute saying that something like 90% of HSI officials who would usually be actually trying to catch the bad guys, and they get all the fancy tools, now they're helping with immigration enforcement. I mean, it's like, again, the breaking down of data barriers between government agencies, and now you have the guys with the really fancy tools trying to find undocumented people. I mean, some of these tools also, and I'll be very careful in what I say here, because I haven't seen evidence it has been used against protesters, but the phone location data stuff,
yes,
the company that sells that is called Penlink. It's a big US contractor. They explicitly advertise their phone location tools to monitor BLM protests.
You're listening to Brett Breaks Things, pushing back, speaking up, and holding the line.
All right, now it's time to scare you a little bit. Just a little bit. Maybe not as much as a couple of the previous stories about fake cell phone towers and buying your information on where you are and where you have been over an extended period of time from the ad companies and weather service providers on your phone. I'm not going to scare you, maybe not going to scare you as much as that did, but I want you to be aware of the story of John. And this story is going to tie together with other stories we've brought you, okay? And this is going to bookend another story we brought you. I'm going to tell you the story of John. John is a 67-year-old retired immigrant from England, okay? He's the son of Jewish parents. He watched his parents struggle through the Holocaust era, post-Holocaust era, and they were involved in advocacy groups for victims, things like that. So he was kind of hip to the MO of the Nazis when his parents were kids. Now, he's well educated. He has a degree. He went to Cambridge for politics and political science and law. So not a dummy. And he became politically active as the years went on. Now, he settled in Philadelphia in 1989. He fell in love with a girl from Philly, followed her back to Philadelphia, and became an American citizen, back in 1989. He's been living there since. Been living in Philly since. Okay. So he has been active, and he has been activated, watching the immigration policy of this country and the way the Trump administration's been going about its business, and some of the injustices visited upon immigrants have inspired him to be vocal about it. So there was one case in particular about an Afghan who was going to be deported, an Afghan who had been promised citizenship for working with the U.S. government in Afghanistan. And this Afghan was saying, I will be 100% killed if I go back. The Taliban will kill me if I go back to Afghanistan. And the Trump administration, DHS, is trying to send him back. Okay, so John hears about this, and he writes a letter to the lead prosecutor in that case, a gentleman named Joseph Dernbach, the guy who's trying to get this Afghan deported, John Dernbach. He writes a letter. He finds the email address for Mr. Dernbach online. He writes him a letter. Mr. Dernbach, don't play Russian roulette with H's life. H is that's who is the Afghan, protecting his anonymity. He's described as H in the court filings, so that's who he refers to here. H, that's the Afghan. Don't play Russian roulette with H's life. Err on the side of caution. There's a reason the U.S. government, along with many other governments, don't recognize the Taliban. Apply principles of common sense and decency. Oh, what an inflammatory letter that was. Just, total red flag, that letter. All right, so he sends this letter out 5 hours later. 5 hours later, he gets an email from Google. He gets an email from Google 5 hours after he sends this letter to Dernbach. Google has received legal process from a law enforcement authority compelling the release of information related to your Google account. Yeah, I had to read it again, and I had to read it one more time. I literally had to read that 3 times to process what the hell that was saying. I could just imagine what John was thinking, and it turns out rather that John also had to read it 3 times. It's what exactly he says. He says he read the message, then he read it a second time, then he read it a third time. Google, the legal process Google had received was a subpoena from the Department of Homeland Security. It was a subpoena from the Department of Homeland Security compelling the release of information related to John's Google account. I want you to stop and think for just a second how much of your life is tied into your Google account. Okay? If maybe you don't, maybe you're strictly Apple, everything, but this applies to you too. Now, okay, so he receives this email. Google says the DHS has just subpoenaed all of your information relating to your Google account. He thought it could be fake. He thought it could be a mistake. But then he thought, oh my God, could this be related to that simple 4-letter email, 4-sentence email I sent to Dernbach? Could it be possible? Now, here's the thing. The subpoena was not made available to John. They did not provide a copy of the subpoena. Google simply told him that they had received a subpoena. John had no way of knowing at the time that it was an administrative subpoena. An administrative subpoena. Why does that sound familiar to you? Because we did the story right here about the DHS's administrative warrants. Not real warrants signed by a judge, not a judicial warrant, but an administrative warrant. And those administrative warrants simply allowed DHS to arrest a person who needs to be forced out of the country. And then the immigration officers, ICE, decided to interpret that administrative warrant as a free pass to bash in your door if somebody with such a warrant was inside. That's illegal. That's unconstitutional. The only way they can bash in a door is through a judicial warrant. Well, they're doing it again. They're doing it in conjunction with, it's just a sideways, just a parallel move. These are administrative subpoenas being given out, not just to John. Oh, no. Now, Homeland Security, they are not compelled in any way to disclose how many administrative subpoenas they have sent out like this. We're talking subpoenas that are not reviewed by a judge. No impartiality, no independence. Just DHS says they want this information on somebody. You can go and get it from Google, but not just Google. They are not required to disclose how many of these they've given out. But just know there have been thousands upon thousands of these non-judicial subpoenas. DHS wants the information, so they go and they tell Google or whoever, and we'll get to the whoever, to give it to them. To give it to them. And I know what you're thinking. It's absolutely illegal. It violates all sorts of privacy rights. It violates so many rights. It's completely illegal and unconstitutional. They've done it to Columbia and Harvard. These administrative subpoenas give us your student rolls. We need to know who's at your school and who is leading these anti-Israel protests. We need to know. It's anti-Semitic and it's dangerous. It's leading to violence. We want your rolls now. They did it to Minnesota's health system. 7,000 workers they want the information on. 7,000 workers they sent administrative subpoenas to. This is one of their MOs. This is one of their tools. This is one of the authoritarian tools in their bag. DHS. Crazy. So back to John. He receives this administrative subpoena notice. Not the subpoena itself, the notice. And he starts to really, he's like, what else could this be coming from? Why am I on their radar? He went to a No Kings parade. He sent a couple notes of criticism to a couple local lawmakers. He even sent one note to Donald Trump. But he said, he couldn't believe that it could be this moderate note to Dernbach. He couldn't believe it. So he follows a link in the letter. He follows a link in this letter from Google. He needs some more information. All right. And the link didn't tell him what was in the subpoena, but it did tell him if you want to block Google from giving the DHS all of this information, if you want to block them, you have to file a motion to dismiss in court and bring us proof of that within 7 days. Imagine if he had missed the link. Imagine how many people don't even click on the link. Forget not giving you the subpoena. How about not knowing you've been subpoenaed at all? How many of these thousands of people have had Google give the DHS all of your information? And when I mean all of it. Okay. So he knew he was in trouble. He knew he he needed help. First thing he did was he went to a well-known immigration lawyer near him. One of Philadelphia's most well-known, a woman named Judy Bernstein Baker. Okay, so he goes to Judy Bernstein Baker, and she starts asking him questions. Okay, well, let me see the subpoena. He says, they didn't send me the subpoena. They only sent me a notice of the subpoena. I have no way of getting the subpoena. She said, how the hell am I supposed to challenge this with no subpoena to challenge? And then she realized that he only had 7 days. And she said flatly, only the very wealthy could ever get a lawyer in time, up to speed, and in front of a judge quick enough to stop this. 7 days, you got to be rich. That's the only way this gets done. And John is not rich, okay? John is not rich. Okay? So John, he notices that in the Google notice, there is a federal court district listed there that this came from. So he calls the federal court district. This is when he learns it's an administrative subpoena because the federal court had absolutely no knowledge of this because it wasn't judicious. It wasn't signed through a judge. It didn't actually go through the federal court district. It just came from DHS. So he tried to call the federal courts themselves. No record of a subpoena at all. This is all DHS wants his information from Google, period. No oversight. No need to show anybody evidence or prove that this subpoena is warranted or legal. We're not doing any of that. We're not doing any of it. Usually these administrative subpoenas are for extreme cases, like when somebody's being sexually abused, a child or someone's being sexually abused, like as we speak, or to track down suspected drug traffickers. They can send these out, and they can even send out extra, legalese to prevent Google from telling you it's been sent out, right? We don't want to give you a heads up. It gets more and more buried in secrecy, depending on the urgency of the situation. But it's the speed that makes them so dangerous and so useful to DHS. It's the speed. One lawyer, a professor and researcher at Columbia Law said this vast administrative power has remained opaque even to those who receive these subpoenas, and invisible to those it affects most. She's saying just what I'm saying here. What if you didn't even get it? What if you get it and you have no idea what you're reading? And don't go contact the most prominent immigration lawyer near you. What if you just say, this is too much for me to deal with? Okay. All right. Now, Google directed him to request a copy of the subpoena from Homeland Security themselves. They provided no phone number, and John's search, his quest to get in touch with Homeland Security, was completely fruitless, maddening, hours long, dead numbers, uninterested attendance. He couldn't get it done. He kept looking, and he could not get it done. Google, by the way, is not the only one doing these. And as I continue with John's story, Google's not the only one doing this. Google regularly publishes transparency reports that shows how many times the government demands data from its users. Google does do that, okay? But it doesn't differentiate between judicial and administrative subpoenas at all. And Google and Meta both have received a record number of subpoenas from this government in just the first 6 months of Trump's second presidency. 28,622 subpoenas have been sent out by this administration's DHS since the beginning of his second term. 28,000. And we only know that because Google and Meta have a transparency policy. We're talking T-Mobile, TikTok, Verizon, AT&T, X. Some of these companies are saying, we don't even want to tell you whether we're telling these people they're getting the subpoenas. We're not even going to answer that. We're not giving you our numbers. We're not telling how many were judicial or administrative. We're not telling you any of it. Forget it. Forget it, Washington Post. You don't get that knowledge.
Breaking politics, breaking narratives, breaking news. But first, we need a coffee break.
Washington, D.C., the most corrupt capital in the world. It's not even close. And the corruption starts right here at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Shady crypto deals, pardons for even the worst criminals, a massive cover-up. Protecting pedophiles and sex traffickers, run directly from the Oval Office in the Department of Justice. Tax breaks, no-bid contracts, backroom deals for people who made seven-figure contributions that reek of corruption. You trusted Donald Trump to clean up Washington, but instead he and his family are raking in billions. And your family? Screwed. Higher prices, jobs collapsing, grocery prices up, cost of living skyrocketing. And every day he makes you lie to yourself, to your family, to God. You know what he is. You know what he's done. You know what he's covering up. Corruption is a cancer in Washington, and the heart of that cancer is right here.
Brett breaks things because someone has to.
Okay. So back to John. So he starts getting really nervous because the deadline had come and gone. The 7 days passed, and he starts doing some serious research. How much trouble am I in? How does this go? And what he found it made him even more angry, okay? What he found is that the DHS has been doing this to a lot of people. And he's seeing what's happening is some people who can muster the resources and get a motion in front of a judge, every time almost, they're getting it dismissed because it's unconstitutional. Judge after judge after judge blocks Google or Meta or Apple or whoever from releasing your information to DHS, and DHS just drops the case, right? If they can't get it, they just drop it. They're not going to battle it in court. They're not going to try to defend the legality of it because there is no legality to it. They are literally just taking unconstitutional subpoenas and throwing them against the wall to see what data on you they can get back. If you don't see the email or you can't represent yourself and file a motion to dismiss, then we got everything. Gotcha. And the government as a whole didn't do this, just Kristi Noem's DHS did this. And of course, she'll share it with whoever she sees fit. That's what, and not only did he find that this is happening over and over and over again, but nothing is being done to stop the policy. Nothing is being done to put a halt to administrative warrants and administrative subpoenas. Nobody's trying to stop the practice of it. They just keep doing it. And every time it gets caught and somebody gets caught for doing it in violation of your constitutional rights, absolutely nothing is done about that person in particular. Whatever the official is, whatever official it is within the DHS that signed the administrative subpoena to get that knowledge, they're not getting any consequences whatsoever. They are not being dissuaded from their actions in the least. There's nothing in place to stop them, and nobody's getting in trouble for it. They just keep doing it. So, here we go. The realization of every fear that anyone who has ever put anything about the government online, the realization of that fear. And we've all had those conversations. Watch what you say into your phone. Watch the emails that you write. Watch what you put on social media. You got to watch what you say, because some people in an SUV, unmarked, with dark glasses, will come out with big guns and take you away. Here's the realization. 9:30 a.m., November 17th, John is in his home when one local law enforcement officer and two men in dark slacks and sport coats and glasses show up at his door and simply say, "We're with Homeland Security." You want to go from A all the way down the line? He writes a letter to a lead prosecutor in an Afghan nationals case, and two guys in dark suits show up at his door. That is the surveillance state we live in. That is the realization of all of those fears. That is Big Brother. That is dystopian. That is authoritarian. No other way to see it. He expressed his First Amendment right to write this lead prosecutor, and two men in dark suits show up at his door. Okay, so his dog starts barking. His wife starts shouting at these people at her front door saying, "Don't you have anything better to do?" Now, she's from Philly, so this doesn't surprise me. Of course, she's going to be tough, vocal about it, right? So they pull out a copy of his letter to Dernbach. They pull out a copy, and they said, "Hey, we just want to hear your side of the story." Okay, all right. So he describes his side of the story. He describes how he was upset about this Afghan nationals case. He describes it to him, all right? He describes the letter from Google. They say, "We don't know anything about that. We're just asking you about this letter. We don't know anything about a DHS administrative subpoena. Not our job. We're here to ask you about this letter." Now, those two gentlemen agreed with John. The email broke no law. They pointed out the mentions of Russian roulette and the Taliban, and said perhaps this prosecutor, Dernbach, feared for his life. So there it is. He sends a private email to Dernbach with Russian roulette and Taliban in it, and it ends up at the desk of a DHS official. Think about that. Okay, so 20 minutes later, they thanked him for his time, and they left. And John asked one last question. He said, hey, does this mean I'm on some kind of list? If I try to travel or something like that? They said, nope, don't worry about it. Of course not. Don't worry about it. Okay, so these men visited. All right, these men visited. But there's still that pesky subpoena, right? They said they knew nothing about it. So he continues a quest to at least find out what's in the subpoena. He goes to an online privacy expert who gave John a means to get this subpoena directly from DHS, okay? He finds a means to do it. And so they email DHS, or they email Google rather. This online expert emails Google about a request, right? A specialized request to get this subpoena. That's when Washington Post gets on board. That's when the Washington Post gets involved, right? This online expert and John, they contact the Washington Post and tell them about their story. So the Washington Post gets personally involved, okay? And so the Washington Post contacts Google themselves about these requests for the subpoena and the case. They send a letter out. They send an email out. They contact Google. 2 hours after they send that email, and 22 days after John had originally received that Google email, they provided John with a copy of the subpoena. Now, the person who authorized the subpoena within the DHS had been redacted by that point. Tough to start a lawsuit against somebody when their name's redacted from the subpoena. Here's what the subpoena. This is the payoff. This is where the flashlight goes under my chin, right? And you guys get the jump scare. Here's what the subpoena requested from Google. Dating back to September 1st, the day, time, and duration of all his online sessions, every associated IP and physical address, every associated, a list of all the search devices he used, any alternate usernames and email addresses, the date he opened his account, his credit card, his driver's license, and his social security number. That is the information one redacted DHS official signed off on to get a subpoena from Google. Had John not gone down this rabbit hole about what this subpoena was, forget the visit from the Goombas over at whatever department, right? They said they didn't know anything about the DHS letter, right? But whatever department within DHS they came from, they just showed up at his door. But they said they knew nothing about the subpoena. Not their department, not their job. So he had to keep digging for this subpoena. Had he not done all of this, he would not have known that DHS wants all of this: his driver's license, his credit card, his social security number, all of the physical and email addresses of any associates. Oh my God. Oh my God. Mind blown. Mind blown. Now here was a nice little caveat. Google then 3 days later, after John, this online expert, and WAPO got their hands on the actual subpoena, 3 days later, Google sent a new email, right? In response to some of WAPO's questioning and insistence. And they said, we didn't actually give the government what they were asking for yet. We didn't do it. Just so you know, we didn't do it yet. Quote, our processes for handling law enforcement subpoenas are designed to protect users' privacy while meeting our legal obligations. We review all legal demands for its legal validity, and we push back against those that are overboard or improper, including objecting to some Entirely. Okay. So it looks like Google, either by default or red tape or someone's conscious decision within Google, something happened where Google decided to red flag this request from DHS and didn't immediately after the 7 days give them everything about John. They didn't. Okay. That's good. That's a good thing. But it didn't stop John. The ACLU then got on board pro bono to represent John, filed a motion to quash the government ever getting this data from Google, right? Filed a motion to keep this from ever happening. His attorneys accused the government of violating a statute that limits the use of administrative subpoenas, and that Homeland Security had violated John's right to free speech. That happened yesterday. Okay, I want to bookend this. I want to finish this story up by telling you this. That happened yesterday. That ACLU motion. That happened yesterday. This has been going on, right? Since September. This has been going on. Those Homeland Security agents told John that he was not on a list and he had nothing to worry about. Well, after that visit, but before this motion by the ACLU, he was off living his life as these things progressed. He decided to travel. He took a cruise. He checked into the cruise. And noticed that his bags weren't with the other passengers' bags. They weren't there. They were instructed to check their cabin. Okay? When they got to their cabin, there was a note on their bags that said, your bag was among those selected for physical inspection. Random? Was that random? Or is he on a list, despite what those DHS officials said? We're not going to need overtime today. I got some stuff I got to take care of after the show. Plus, we had some more stuff to get into that we will be able to get into tomorrow, hopefully. So we want to do it due diligence. We don't want to rush it through in overtime, so we'll get you that properly. So we're going to wrap up here. So we will be here tomorrow. We're going straight through this week as well. We're going hard. We appreciate all of your support, all of your views. Your donations are unbelievable. Just go to BrettBreaksThings.com, hit the donate button. I do want to tell you this. That was a WAPO story. Well, the company has announced yesterday, just now, was it earlier today? WAPO has announced they're laying off 30% of its workforce. 30% of its workforce. 300 of their roughly 800 journalists have been fired. The company men say it was necessary. The editors and some of the longtime journalists say it's a travesty. Why do you think it's happening? Why is Jeff Bezos cutting 30% of his staff? I'll leave you with that. I'll see you tomorrow.
They'll try to repair the narrative, but Brett Breaks Things will be back tomorrow to break it all down.